The first time I really noticed her, it wasn't during lecture. It was later, on a Tuesday evening, when the library had thinned out and the vending machine hummed louder than the people inside it. I'd seen Professor Langley 100 times before, standing at the front of the hall, her glasses balanced low as if the world was always a little farther away than she liked. But in the library, with her jacket folded neatly on the back of a chair and a thermos half empty beside her, she looked different. Less like a professor. More like someone waiting for something. Or maybe someone who had stopped waiting. I sat 2 tables away, pretending to scroll through my notes. I didn't really need to be there. My midterms were fine. My life wasn't. Nights stretched too long in my apartment. I'd learned the sound of my fridge cycling on and off, the tick of the bathroom pipe when it cooled. Sometimes I typed messages I never sent, half-thoughts, like "You still awake?" Or "Do you want to meet?" then erased them before the cursor could blink twice. That night, though, I wasn't alone. She noticed me before I spoke. "You've been staring at that page for 10 minutes," she said, not looking up. I laughed, caught. "Yeah. Just letting it sink in, I guess." She smiled faintly, still writing something in the margin of her notes. Her pen tapped once, twice. "If you let it sink too long, it drowns." Her dry humor surprised me. It wasn't the kind you use to fill silence. It was the kind that made silence sharper, almost deliberate. I don't know what made me move closer. Maybe the way the light fell uneven across her table, or how she had pulled her hair back loosely, as though she'd stopped caring about appearances halfway through the day. I sat down across from her, trying to make it casual. "Mind if I?" She gestured at the empty chair before I finished. "You already brought it over." I smiled, embarrassed. She noticed. We worked in quiet. She had a way of circling key phrases with her pen slowly, like she was tracing something that mattered more than she'd admit. My own notes blurred together. Instead of reading, I watched her hand. The way her fingers curved around the thermos, the faint blue ink staining the side of her thumb. At one point, she looked up and caught me staring. I pretended to adjust my notebook. She didn't call me out. She just let it hang there, the air denser between us than before. Minutes passed. She checked her watch, then gathered her papers into a neat stack. "I shouldn't stay too late," she said. "Long day?" "They're all long." Her voice was soft, like she hadn't meant to say it aloud. She slipped her jacket on, the sleeves catching briefly at her wrists. As she stood, she hesitated, and for a second, I thought she might say something else. Instead, she gave me a polite nod and turned toward the exit. I told myself that was it, just a strange, almost shared evening. But when I packed my bag 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed on the table. A message from an unknown number. "Next Tuesday. Same time. Bring coffee. L." I stared at the screen longer than I should have, my thumb hovering, my breath caught halfway. I never remembered giving her my number. I showed up the next Tuesday with 2 coffees. Not because she told me to, though maybe that was part of it. Mostly because I wanted to see if she'd really be there. She was. Same table. Same thermos. Same quiet air around her, like she carried her own weather. When she saw the cups in my hand, her mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, but wasn't nothing either. "Black?" I asked. "You remembered." She reached for it, her fingers brushing mine briefly. A small thing, but it stayed with me. We settled into silence. The library was warmer that night, the hum of the heater competing with the scratching of pens. I tried to read, but my focus kept circling back to her. The way she sipped her coffee slowly, as though stalling for time. At one point I said, "Do you ever get tired of it?" She looked up. "Teaching?" "Yeah." Her eyes softened, but not in a way that felt comforting. More like she was weighing whether I deserved an honest answer. Finally she said, "Sometimes. But it's not the work. It's the parts of myself I had to set aside for it." I didn't know what she meant, exactly, but I didn't push. Later, as I fumbled through my notes, she spoke again. When I was your age, I thought everything was waiting for me. That I had time. And then, time just kept going. She gave a faint laugh, short and almost bitter. Turns out it doesn't wait. I didn't have a response. My throat tightened with words I couldn't shape. She must have noticed, because she turned the page of her notebook like she'd said too much. The risk hung between us then, not just the age, though that was obvious, undeniable. It was the fact that she was my professor, someone who wasn't supposed to meet me outside of office hours, much less in the quiet shadows of a library with take-out coffee between us. I told myself it was just study nights. That it didn't mean anything. But in the pauses, when she adjusted her glasses, when her hand lingered on the rim of her thermos, I felt the gravity of something unsaid pulling me closer. She broke the silence this time. You remind me of someone, she said softly. Who? A friend. From when I was younger. We used to study like this. She gave me a quick glance, then dropped it. He moved away. I think about him sometimes. I nodded, pretending it was just a passing comment, but my mind spiraled. Was she comparing me to him? Was I just a shadow of someone else? We read a while longer. Words blurred. At one point, my pen rolled toward her side of the table. She picked it up and handed it back. Our hands touched again, fleeting, nothing. But this time, neither of us pulled away right away. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The third Tuesday felt different before I even walked in. She was already there, but her chair angled slightly away from mine, as if she'd decided, consciously or not, to draw a line across the table. I set the coffee down anyway. She thanked me, her voice quiet, almost clipped. We worked in silence longer than usual. Pages turned, pens scratched, but the weight between us pressed heavier than before. I found myself watching her lips move when she mouthed a phrase, then looking away too quickly, pretending to reread my notes. At one point I said, You seem somewhere else tonight. Her eyes flicked up, then down again. I shouldn't be here, she said softly. Not sharp. Just tired. I froze. Do you want me to? No. She cut in fast, then slowed. I mean, no. It's fine. You're fine. Her hand tightened around the coffee cup, knuckles pale. The silence after that was louder than the heater. Half an hour passed before the interruption. A classmate, Sarah, someone I barely knew, walked into the library, scanning the tables. When her gaze landed on us, her eyebrows lifted just slightly. Recognition, surprise, maybe suspicion. She didn't say anything, but she didn't have to. The moment was already broken. Professor Langley shifted in her seat, suddenly busy with her notes. I pretended to be deep in mine, though my heart beat too fast, too hard. Sarah left, finally. But the air didn't return to what it was. After a while, she sighed. People talk, she said without looking at me. I don't care. The words slipped out before I could filter them. Her pen paused mid-stroke. She didn't lift her eyes, but I saw her lips pressed together, some mix of restraint and something else. Something closer to wanting. We didn't speak for the rest of the session. She packed up earlier than usual. I thought she'd just leave without a word, but at the door, she turned back. You're too young to understand where this leads, she said. Maybe she expected me to nod to accept it. Instead, I found myself standing, crossing the space between us before I thought better. Close enough to see the faint line of tiredness beneath her eyes, the way her breath caught in her throat. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. That I understood more than she thought. But the words stuck. Her hand brushed my sleeve as if to steady herself, or to push me back. The touch lingered a second too long. Our eyes met. Too close. Too dangerous. She drew in a slow breath, then stepped back. Next week, she whispered, almost to herself. Then she was gone. I stood there, sleeves still warm where her fingers had been, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. Wondering if next week would really come. The next week, she didn't show up to the library. I waited, coffee cooling by my hand, checking the clock every 10 minutes. The hours stretched, then collapsed into nothing. Finally, I packed up, convincing myself it was better this way. That she'd drawn the line, and I should stop walking toward it. But Thursday afternoon, I found her sitting outside on a campus bench. No books, no papers. Just her, coat drawn tight, eyes somewhere far away. I hesitated, then sat down beside her. Too close, probably. She didn't move. "You missed Tuesday," I said. My voice sounded smaller than I meant it to. "I know." Her hands tightened around the strap of her bag. "It's complicated." The silence stretched. I wanted to fill it, but I didn't. Finally, she spoke again. "I keep asking myself why I keep meeting you. Why I let it continue." Her breath came out uneven. "And the answer isn't professional. It isn't even responsible." My chest tightened. I wanted her to look at me, but she didn't. "I don't want to stop," I said quietly. Her laugh was soft, almost bitter. "Of course you don't. You don't know what it would cost." I turned to her then, catching her profile in the low winter light. "Then tell me." She shook her head, finally glancing my way. Her eyes were glassy, like she was holding something back. "You remind me of a life I didn't get to live. And that makes this feel dangerous." The words landed heavier than I expected. Not flattery. Not romance. Something closer to grief. We sat in silence. The wind caught a stray strand of her hair. Without thinking, I reached to tuck it back. My fingers hovered, then brushed lightly against her temple. She froze, not pulling away, not leaning in. Just breathing shallow, like the air itself was thin. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. "Neither do I." My voice cracked. "But I know what I want." Her eyes closed briefly. When they opened, she turned toward me fully, face inches from mine. The world around us blurred, the chatter of passing students, the sound of leaves scratching pavement. It was just her breath, her gaze, her restraint. Her hand lifted halfway, as if to touch my face, then stopped in the air between us. Hovering. Trembling slightly. "I can't," she said, but the word hung unfinished. I leaned closer without meaning to, until I could see the faint crease near her lips, the way her pupils widened. She drew in a sharp breath and pulled her hand back to her lap. "If this happens, we don't go back." The silence after that wasn't empty. It was full, charged, almost unbearable. I searched her face for an answer she wouldn't give. The only question left was the one neither of us dared to ask out loud. Do we want it to happen? The next Tuesday, the bench was empty. The library table too. I stayed anyway, the second coffee cooling untouched at her place. Every set of footsteps that passed made me look up, expecting her. By 10 o'clock, I stopped pretending. She wasn't coming. The following day in class, she didn't glance my way once. She spoke briskly, chalk tapping against the board, erasing equations almost before we'd finished copying them. If anyone else noticed, they didn't show it. But I did. Every clipped sentence, every averted glance. I told myself she was drawing boundaries, being smart, professional. I should have respected that. Instead, I kept waiting for the moment she'd slip, one small look, one shared pause. It never came. By Thursday, I couldn't stand it. I walked to her office, stood outside the door. Light glowed through the frosted glass, the silhouette of her moving faintly inside. My hand hovered, ready to knock. Then I heard another voice. A man's. Low, steady. Her laugh followed, soft, familiar. Not forced. I froze. I couldn't make out the words, only the rhythm. A conversation she hadn't shared with me. My chest tightened, and I backed away before I could hear more. That night, my phone buzzed. A number I'd memorized, though I hadn't saved it. "Sorry about this week. Things came up." I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. "With him?" I typed, then deleted. "Are you okay?" Deleted. Finally I wrote, "Do you want me to stop coming?" I didn't send it. Instead, I shoved the phone face down on the table. The screen went dark, my reflection staring back in the black glass, hesitant, unfinished. The next Tuesday, I didn't go. I told myself it would make it easier. But walking past the library window and seeing her inside, alone this time, thermos by her hand, made it worse. She looked up once, toward the glass. I ducked my head, pretended I didn't notice. Kept walking. The distance didn't feel like rejection. It felt stranger than that. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence that it was raining the night it finally happened. Not a storm, just that steady, soaking kind that seeps into everything. I'd been walking home, hood pulled tight, when I saw her under the awning outside the faculty building. No umbrella. Just standing there, arms crossed, like she'd been caught in a pause she couldn't step out of. I almost kept walking. But my feet didn't listen. "Forgot your umbrella?" I asked, voice half lost in the rain. She looked at me, really looked. Not the brisk glance from class, not the sidelong look from the library. Something unguarded. "I thought you weren't coming anymore," she said. "I wasn't," I admitted. "But here I am." The rain filled the silence. She shifted slightly, as though about to step away, then stopped. "I'm not good at this," she murmured. "At what?" "Letting people close. Letting myself want something I shouldn't." Her eyes flicked toward me, then down at the wet pavement. "It's easier to keep the door shut." I swallowed, the words thick in my throat. "So why didn't you?" Her lips pressed tight. For a long moment, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, barely audible. "Because I wanted to know what it would feel like." The awning wasn't wide. We stood close enough that I could see the droplets on her hair, the faint tremor in her hands. I wanted to reach for them, but I stayed still. "You think I don't understand," I said finally. "But I do. More than you think." Her breath caught. She turned then, meeting my eyes fully, no shields left. "If I let this happen, I don't get to be your professor anymore. I don't get to be the person I'm supposed to be." I nodded slowly. "So maybe just be the person you are. Right here. With me." The words hung between us, heavier than the rain. Her shoulders softened, the fight leaving her in a quiet exhale. She didn't step into me, didn't close the distance. But she lifted her hand, just slightly, and let it rest against my arm. A small touch. Barely there. But it was the first time she hadn't pulled back. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. I didn't push. I just let my hand cover hers, steady and simple. We stood like that, the rain hemming us in, both of us knowing nothing was solved, nothing promised. But for once, nothing was hidden either. She gave a faint, tired smile. Not a yes. Not a no. Just an okay. And for the first time in weeks, it was enough. Time didn't change everything at once. It shifted in pieces. We never had a big talk, never sat down to name what was happening between us. Instead, it grew in the empty spaces, library nights that became quiet walks home, cups of black coffee traded like ritual, the clock hitting 8:47 a.m. before either of us realized how quickly the morning had passed. She stopped sitting apart from me. I stopped pretending not to watch her. And somehow, that was enough. There were still pauses, still moments when she pulled back, when I wondered if I'd imagined the whole thing. But she always returned, slipping back into my orbit with the same dry humor, the same careful hands. One evening, months later, we found ourselves at the same bench where she'd once confessed her doubts. This time, she had tea in her thermos instead of coffee. She passed it to me without asking, as though it was already understood. "It's too sweet," I said after a sip. "You'll live." Her voice carried no defense, just a faint amusement. The air between us no longer felt like a question. It felt lived in, like a room you've entered enough times to know where the creaky floorboard is, where the light falls in the evening. She never said "I love you." I never did either. But when her hand found mine, without hesitation now, I knew that was the word neither of us needed. The risks hadn't vanished. She was still my professor. I was still 20 years younger. The world outside still wouldn't understand. But inside the quiet, we'd carved out something that didn't require permission. I don't think it was about romance, not really. It was about being seen, and kept, and allowed. About someone remembering your coffee order without asking. About showing up when you said you would. One morning, she caught me glancing at the clock, 8:47, again. She smirked. You always look at it. Because it's when everything feels settled, I said. She didn't answer, just rested her head briefly on my shoulder, as though that explained enough. And maybe it did. I don't know if what we had was perfect. Probably not. But it was ours, quiet, unhurried, stitched together in the pauses life gave us. And that was enough. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?